Masechet Nazir Daf Mem Tet. We're going to see a new Mishnah today about the minimum measurements regarding Tumat Met. But first, we're going to finish off our discussion about Met Mitzvah and the source. We did the source for Kohen Gadol, and we're talking about the source regarding a Nazir, that a Nazir cannot become Tameh Lamet for anyone except for a Met Mitzvah. Rabbi Akiva derived it from this pasuk from the words le'aviv ul imo, that he cannot become tameh for his father and mother, but that comes to teach us that he can become tameh for a met mitzvah. So that was Rabbi Akiva's original derasha. We wondered yesterday, why do you need father and mother? We're going to talk about this today. And then Rabbi Akiva went on and said, from the word le'achiv, that teaches that if a person is Kohen Gadol and a Nazir, also, he can become Tameh Lamet for a Met Mitzvah, even if he has both. Okay, now we're going to start off asking, Rabbi Akiva, you seem to have too many derashot, because even if you have just Le'achiv, and that teaches us that a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir, someone who's both at the same time Kohen Gadol and Nazir, can become Tameh for Met Mitzvah, then all the more so if he's only Kohen Gadol or only Nazir. Therefore, from the word Le'achiv, I can derive the entire law of Met Mitzvah for a Nazir and for a Kohen Gadol, so I don't really need Le'aviv ul imo. So that's the opening question. Rabbi Akiva, Mikidi la shena Kohen Gadol lechudev la shena Kohen Gadol vehu Nazir. Nafka mi le'achiv. La'aviv ul imo lamali. According to Rabbi Akiva, since it makes no difference whether someone is a Kohen Gadol only or whether he's a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir, no matter whether he has one prohibition or two prohibitions, he's permitted to become Tameh Lamet. And we learned from Achiv that even if he has two prohibitions, is permitted, so certainly either prohibition by itself would also be permitted. Therefore, what do we need La'aviv ul imo to teach us? We already know that a person, a Kohen Gadol or Nazir, cannot become Tameh Lamet for relatives. We learned that from earlier in the pasuk, and so we don't need this for Met Mitzvah. Why do we need these two words? And the answer is Serichi di katav aviv hava amina hainu tamad lamit tamele mishum da chazaka ba'almahu aval imod yadin deyelidte litame la. So the answer is actually we need laviv ulimo for themselves. Even though we had a rule that said he cannot become tameh, this can be applicable to both Nazir and Kohen Gadol. The phrase is said by both. Laviv ulimo. Okay, so even though we know that they cannot become tameh for close relatives in general, the Torah nevertheless has to go out of its way to specify father and mother. Because if it said only father, I would think that the prohibition to become Tameh Lamet is only for a father, but not for a mother. And maybe a Nazir and a Kohen Gadol can become Tameh for their mother. Now, why? What's the difference between them? Well, the mother, Yadin, we know who a person's mother is. That's for sure, right? We saw she was pregnant, she gave birth, the midwife is there, the doctor is there, and so it's clear there's 100% proof who a person's mother is. And therefore, I would say maybe they can actually become a tameh for their mother because they know exactly who the mother is, and that's a very strong and close relationship. Whereas father, if it only said father, I would say no. A father cannot become tameh to a father because no one knows with 100% proof who their father is. Right? There's no witnesses. We just rely on a chazakah, a presumption. A presumption is that if a mother gives birth to someone, then probably the person that she is married to at the time is the father. So it goes by a general presumption. But maybe because it's only based on a presumption, you can't become Tameh Lamet as a Nazir or Kohen Gadol based on a presumption. If you have proof that it's your father, then yes, become Tameh Lamet. But you can't become Tameh Lamet because you cannot prove that that's your father. Therefore, if the pasuk said only father, I would say the prohibition to become Tameh Lamet is only for a father because that's only based on chazakah. But the mother, a person, the Nazir, can become Tameh Lamet for his mother. But this is not true, so that's why it has to say the mother. Fine. Now, v'ikatav rachamana imo, if it only said mother, hava amina imo la litamela, delav azel bazar'a batra, aval aviv kevan damar mo lemishpechotam, lebet avotam, ema litamela kamashmalan. So I might think that for a mother, a Nazir cannot become tameh for her, because a person's lineage does not go by the mother. We go by the mother for whether the person is Jewish or not, but not for his lineage in terms of Kohen, Levi, Israel, what tribe he's from. So the connection to the mother is weaker than that of a father, because for a father, the pasuk says when Moshe is going to count the people, you go by their families according to their father's household. So we see that a person's connection to his father is more direct, and so if it said that a Nazir cannot become tameh for his mother, I might think only for his mother, but for the father, he can become tameh because that connection is very close. And that's why we have to say both mother and father. All right, so this is a very fascinating discussion. Which connection is closer, a person with his mother or a person with his father? And in the end, they're both prohibited, so they both have aspects of strength and are basically equal then. Okay, Val kol nafshot met lo yavo lamali. Okay, so now we figured that out according to the Rabbi Akiva. We rearranged a bit, and now we know why it needs to say father and mother. Those are actually to teach the laws about relatives and not met mitzvah, because we have the word la'achiv that could teach for met mitzvah. All right, and that applies for Kohen Gadol also. Since we're talking about Kohen Gadol as well, let's focus on that pasuk. Val kol nafshot met lo yavo lamali. For Kohen Gadol, why do you need to have this pasuk that he cannot become tameh lamet? I mean, after all, even a regular Kohen cannot become tameh lamet. So here we're going to derive something from every phrase. Al kol lapuke rehokim. So al kol, that gives us the basic law that Kohen Gadol cannot become tameh for non-relatives. Met lapuke kerovim. Met comes to add also not even close relatives. That's the different that Kohen Gadol versus regular Kohanim. Nafshot lapuke rebi'itam shi'asa mishenei metim she'mitameh be'ohel shene'emar al kol nafshot met lo yavo. The word nafshot, which is in plural, comes to exclude, meaning to prohibit a Kohen Gadol from becoming tameh lamet, even regarding a revi'it of dam, revi'it of blood that comes from two corpses. You might think, it's just a little bit from one corpse, it's a little bit from the other corpse, so by themselves would not rise up to the minimum level to make something tameh in a tent. Tent impurity only applies to tent impurity only applies to corpse impurity, only if it's a human corpse in a tent. Only then does it spread throughout the tent, and also requires a minimum amount, which we're going to see in the next Mishnah what those minimum amounts are. The minimum amount for blood is revi'it, and the chidush is that nafshot, even if it comes from two different bodies, but it adds up to a revi'it, then also it does cause tent impurity, as the pasuk says, and of course this pasuk again. Nafshot met, right? From nafshot, nefesh also associated with blood, right? Ki hadam hu hanafesh. And so nafshot, many bloods, even if they come from many bodies, if they add up to the revi'it, it causes tent impurity. And therefore a Kohen Gadol, even a regular Kohen, cannot become tameh lamet by going into a tent where there is a revi'it of blood, even if it's from two bodies. All right, so this is interesting how we end off this darasha, and it's a nice intro right into the next Mishnah. It's kind of artistic the way the Gemara, if it was talking about the previous Mishnah, but finds a way to link it to the next one. Next Mishnah, al elu tum'ot hanazir megaleach al hamet v'al kazait min hamet v'al kazait nesel v'al melot harvad rakav al hashidra v'al hagulgolet v'al eber min hamet v'al eber min hachai sheyesh alav basar karaoi ve'al chasi kav asamot ve'al chasi log dam. This is following is a list of corpse impurities for which a Nazir will have to shave and do the whole process, restart his counting. If it's an entire dead body, or even just a kezait, a size piece of a dead body. The Gemara will ask, why do you need to say alamet if you already said kezait min hamet? All the more so if it's an entire dead body. Kezait netzel, it probably is related to nozel, liquid that comes from a body, or a ladle full of dry dust from a dead body. Shidra, the skeleton, or the skull. The Gemara will talk about, is it both or each one separately? A limb, even if it's not the whole body, but just one limb from that was severed from a dead body, or a limb that was severed from a live body. If someone was amputated, that limb also causes corpse impurity. If it has enough flesh on it. And also a half of a kab of atzamot, of bones, fill up a half of a kab, and also a log of blood. Okay, now regarding this entire list, Val Maga'an, Val Masa'an, Val Ahilan, Valesim Kisora, Maga'o, Val Masa'o. If you have any amount of this list, then that the Kohen, or Kohen, Nazir, anyone, will become Tameh Lamet in three ways. Either by touching it, or by carrying it, even if they're not touching it. If they're carrying it in a box or on pillows, they still become tameh. Or if they are under the same roof as any of these items, then that person becomes tameh lamet. But if it's smaller than that, then that's a different shiur. As long as if there's a bone that's the size of a barley grain or bigger, then that also causes tum'ah if by touching or by carrying, but not with tent impurity. If it's smaller even than that, then it will not cause impurity. So that's the difference between these bigger sizes and the barley grain, is whether it causes tent impurity or not. Al elu hanazir megaleach umazeh bashilishi ubashebi'i vesoter et hakodmin ve'no matchil limnot ela al she'itar umebi al korbenotav. For all of these ways of becoming tameh lamet, a nazir will have to do the whole shaving process, and that will include becoming tahor again. And so you need to get sprinkled with the waters of the para aduma, mixed with the ashes, on the 3rd and 7th day, and he will negate all the days that he counted. He has to start from 1 all over again, and he cannot start counting until he finished the tahara process and brought the korbanot on the 8th day. After he's sprinkled on the 3rd and 7th day, the 8th day he can start counting as number 1. All right, that is the Mishnah. Now, Tenor Banan, Achar Petirato shel Rabbi Meir amar lehen Rabbi Yehuda letalmidav. Okay, a really amazing story. When Rabbi Meir died, Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai told his students. Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef bar Ilai are all students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is in the 3rd generation of Tanaim. And so these sages are from the 4th generation. Rabbi Yosef also, who's going to come up, is in the same generation. So these are all colleagues. So when Rabbi Meir died, Rabbi Yehuda told his students, Ali kansu talmidei Rabbi Meir lekan mipnei shekan teranin hen velo lilmod Torah hen ba'in ela lekapecheni b'halachot hen ba'im. So the way it worked is that when one sage dies, so those students, they don't have a teacher anymore. What are they going to do? They would go and find another teacher. Each teacher had his own school, or study circle rather, and rather than thinking of a big institution, that has a giant building and many classes that people sign up for, like they would in a modern school. These were small study circles that would meet in the rabbi's home, or a nearby Bet Knesset or Bet Midrash, or sometimes outdoors in the field. So therefore, when a rabbi died, then the others would go and say, oh, we're going to go study with a different rabbi. Now, so when Rabbi Meir died, Rabbi Yehuda said, I don't want the students of Rabbi Meir to come here, because they are kanteranin, they are vexatious, they just cause trouble. They're not coming with sincerity to learn Torah, but rather they want to overwhelm me with halachot. They just come and they keep asking questions, bringing up sources. All they do is want to challenge, and they're not really here to learn, and they really are very disruptive to my class. I don't want the students to be me'ir. Okay, amazing. Anyway, Dahak Sumchus v'nichnas, one of the students of Meir, one of the top students, Sumchus, he found his way in, he snuck in, and he's in the shiur of the Yehuda. Amar lehem, kach shana li Rabbi Meir, al elu mitumot hanazir megalech, v'ala alamet al kazait bin amet. And so, sure enough, true to form, Sumchus gets up, raises his hand, and says, Rabbi Meir taught me the following tradition, that the Nazir has to shave because of the following types of tum'ah, if it's a corpse or even an olive-sized amount of a corpse. You see, this is our Mishnah, but this story is earlier than the Mishnah. The Mishnah was finally redacted by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, but Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi did not write it from scratch, obviously. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi has just put together the traditions that he had from his teacher as Rabbi Meir, among others. And so you see, this is the proto-Mishnah when Rabbi Meir formulated this oral tradition in the following words. Right? You can see from here that each school had their own oral traditions in the way that they formulated it. So Rabbi Yehuda had his curriculum, he taught it his way, and now the student of Rabbi Meir comes and says, they probably were talking about the subject, and Sumchus says, Rabbi Meir, he taught it in the following way, and he quotes he quotes Rabbi Meir's tradition. But this is a good example of the way that a Stam Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, as we see here. Okay, Ka'as Rabbi Yehuda v'amar lehen, lo kach amarti lachem, al yikansu talmidei Rabbi Meir lekan, mipnei shekanteranin hen, al kazait min hamet megaleach, al hamet lo kol sheken. And Rabbi Yehuda got angry when he saw Sumchus asking this question. He says, I already told you, this is exactly what I meant when I said that the students of Rabbi Meir should not enter here, because all they want to do is cause trouble and annoyance. And this is a good example. Look at this tradition. If a Nazir has to shave because of a kezait from a body, then all the more so if it's a whole body. So you see that Rabbi Meir's formulation is not needed. It's just it's redundant. And see, that's why I didn't want the students of Rabbi Meir. All they do is quote sources, quote traditions, just to annoy me, and I didn't want that. All right. So now we have this tension here, and luckily Rabbi Yosef steps in. Amar Rabbi Yosef, again, he is another student of Rabbi Meir, colleague of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. And he says, Yomeru Meir shachav, Yehuda ka'as, Yosef shatak, Torah mateh aleha. Rabbi Yosef sees what's going on and says, look at what people will say. People, outsiders, students, lay people, they're going to look at what's going on here in our yeshivot. They're going to say, Rabbi Meir died. Rabbi Yehuda got angry. Rabbi Yosef said nothing, right? And there's no leadership. The whole system is going to break down. And what will happen to Torah? Nobody will want to study Torah. They'll see that the teachers are all in disarray, and everybody will just be confused and and no one's gonna transmit the Torah. So this is not good. I have to be the one to do something about it. I can't be quiet. And so Rabbi Yosef steps in. Amar Rabbi Yosef, lo nisrecha ela lemet she'en alav kazait basar v'adayin yomar aleve min megaleach al kulo lo kol sheken. So Rabbi Yosef says, I'll explain it. The reason why the Rabbi Meir's statement, which is also our Mishnah, needs to say met, and kazait min hamet is for a body that does not have even an olive size of flesh on it. And so if it's an olive size of flesh, that by itself causes tum'ah. But let's say the flesh all decomposed, and you have a body, but it's a small body, maybe an infant, and there's not even an amount of flesh on it, or an adult that there's no flesh on it. The flesh is all disintegrated. So then that would not fall into the category of kazait basar, but it is a full body, and so that's why I need the body to teach me that also. See, so I have an answer that way. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't have to be all upset, and Rabbi Meir's traditions will not be lost, and so Rabbi Yosef is making peace. Okay, but still, we ask, hold on, that answers those two statements in the Mishnah, but we could still ask about the further on later in the Mishnah, which is also probably from Rabbi Meir's tradition, that says for an eved, for one limb of a body, one the Nazir has to shave. So why can't you just say one limb and not say a whole met? And then I would know all the more so. If a limb, even if it doesn't contain flesh, that by itself causes impurity, and the Nazir has to shave. So all the more so for a whole corpse. So why do I need both of those statements? And now this is already not part of the discussion of Rabbi Yosef, but now the Gemara itself and later the Amoraim are taking up this discussion. And Rabbi Yochanan explains, Lo nisracha ela lenefel shelo nitkasheru evarav begidin. We're talking about a fetus that was miscarried, where the limbs have not yet become joined up with sinews, and so the limbs are not individual limbs just yet. It's still just one amorphous body without separated limbs, and so it has to teach us hachanameh benefel shelo nitkasheru ebara begidin. Rabbi Yochanan said that statement elsewhere. Regarding a fetus that limbs have not become connected. And so we're going to take that concept that Rabbi Yochanan said elsewhere, and we can apply it to here, that we need to add this statement, met, and also eved mimenu, that if it's a limb from a full body, that causes tumat met, but also a whole body of a fetus that doesn't have any limbs yet because they haven't been joined together, that nefel also causes tumat met. Good. Rava Amar lo nisracha ela lerob binyano ulerob binyano she'en bahen roba atzamot. Rava says, no, we need a different explanation for why we have to say amet. That's needed for anytime you have a majority of the structure or of a person, or a majority of the bones of it, even if it comes out to less than a quarter kav of atzamot. In other words, a very small body, an infant or a fetus, where the total amount that you have is less than a rova of bones, and so it doesn't meet the minimum threshold for that. But it is a majority of the entirety of the body, so that also causes tumat met, and so that's a variation of the answer why in the Mishnah it needs to tell us both a body and a kezait of a body and a limb of a body. Each of those address different scenarios. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'Amen.